La Bella Vista glowed like a stage, crystal catching warm light, waiters threading the aisle with champagne that whispered against the rims. I stood to greet my brother when she stepped between us. "Elena, we need to talk." Sophia's smile didn't reach her eyes. I expected chit-chat, seeding charts, nerves, not a blade. "I want you to leave." The room did not go silent, but it felt like it did. Forks still chimed. Someone laughed 2 tables over. Somewhere behind me, a cork sighed. My world narrowed to her mouth, forming each clean, deliberate word. "Your presence complicates things. Marco's family, your history, it's messy. This is our moment. I won't have it overshadowed." I looked to my brother, custom suit, cufflinks catching the light. The boy I'd carried on my back across East LA, sidewalks when our parents worked double shifts. The man whose first project I underwrote with internship checks and a legal strategy no one saw. He said nothing. Silence can bruise. It bloomed across my ribs, slow and deep. I tasted steel. I thought of our mother's hands, raw from scrubbing other people's kitchens, folding my LSAT notes when I fell asleep at the table, of my father's boots left by the door, dust haloing the mat like proof of a life paid in hours, of Marco's grin when we mapped his first deal, my contracts tucked beneath his ambition like rebar under concrete. And this woman, angles calculated for cameras, dress chosen to photograph as triumph, was asking me to vanish like a bad comment. Lawyers don't break, we adapt. Something inside me turned, cool and precise, the way a lock chooses one key. Not rage, strategy. I could feel the weight of every clause I'd ever underlined, every exhibit tab I'd ever set. My pulse slowed to argument pace. Fact, cite, conclusion. "Excuse me?" I said evenly. Sophia didn't blink. Around us, the evening kept performing. A waiter's sleeve brushed my shoulder. A chandelier hummed softly above the room. I watched the reflections in the glass, my navy suit, hair pulled tight, a woman who had made a career out of holding lines no one else could hold. I saw Marco's profile beside me, handsome and still, as if any movement might topple the version of his life he wanted the world to see. He met my eyes for half a second, then looked away. Fine. If survival is a language, my family taught me fluency. If protection is a choice, I was already making it. I set my glass down and felt the stem press a half moon into my palm, a quiet signature. "Enjoy your dinner," I said. Past the curtains, the city glowed. In the window, my reflection straightened, calm, contained, while behind the glass, the first hairline crack traced across a perfect evening and didn't stop. If you've ever had to choose protection over approval, stay with me. And if our journey speaks to you, join us at Family Power Stories. Like, comment, sub, so stories like ours don't get erased. The valet lights faded in my rearview mirror as I pulled away from La Bella Vista. The night smelled of citrus polish and street dust, but all I could taste was silence. Marco's silence. It filled the car more than the hum of the engine or the soft static of the radio. I didn't cry. Lawyers don't break. We adapt. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles whitened and counted streetlights like clauses in a contract. Red, gold, green, each one a reminder that motion is survival. I drove home on autopilot, memory overlapping with pavement, East LA apartments, our parents' tired faces after double shifts, the fridge notes in our mother's careful English. Proud. Check oven. My father's boots by the door, soles cracked from carrying the American dream. The nights I studied torts while Marco worked through algebra at the same table. The way he grinned when I slid scholarship deadlines under his door with a note signed only E. And tonight, he looked away. I parked in the garage, concrete heavy with damp chill. The elevator mirrored me back. Navy suit, hair twisted tight, face cold. The kind of face people think can't be hurt. Inside my apartment, everything was orderly. Keys in dish, heels under bench, jacket on hanger. I poured a glass of water and set it down untouched. The quiet throbbed. On the credenza, a photo of Marco and me at his community college graduation. His arm thrown around me, his grin unguarded. Mine steady, proud. I picked it up. It felt heavier now. "Your presence complicates things." Her words replayed, sharp and deliberate. There's a difference between hurt and harm. Hurt bruises the surface. Harm goes deeper. It changes how you move. Tonight I felt both. I sat at my desk. Laptop glow washed the room sterile, like a deposition room. Legal pads stacked, case files aligned, pen balanced. I pulled one pad close and wrote the date. Stopped. My hand hovered. A line inside me, taut and vibrating, shifted from humiliation to calculation. I thought of Marco's silence again, not hesitation, but a decision. He chose an image over blood, at least in that moment. Maybe he thought love demanded it. Maybe fear did. Either way, the boy I had carried on my shoulders had allowed me to be dismissed like a smudge on glass. I clicked my pen shut. The sound felt final. Dad's voice echoed from memory. When you don't like the terms, you renegotiate. He wasn't talking law back then, just overtime hours. Still, the principle was the same. You don't storm, you don't beg, you change the math. My phone lit with texts, cousin, planner, cousins again. I turned it face down. Pain grows when fed attention. I wasn't feeding it. Instead, I opened a new document, typed family, risk assessment. The cursor blinked. The humiliation from dinner surged again, the waiter brushing past, the chandelier's hum, Marco's eyes sliding away. I remembered the tiny hinge click inside me, the sound of a lock recognizing its key. People expect rage here, yelling, shattered glass, slammed doors. But rage is obvious. It gives the room your map. I wanted something colder, smaller, the kind of decision that doesn't announce itself until it's already rewritten the terms. I rubbed the chip in the quartz counter, scar from a dropped mug years ago. My thumb traced it the way I once traced Marco's college essays, line by line. I remembered his late-night calls. "Can you read this email?" How do I phrase this? The way he turned to me after signing his first deal. We did it. He had always said we. That's why tonight stung deeper. I had positioned him perfectly, for someone like her. The water glass was still untouched. I drank anyway. The taste was flat, metallic. The city outside thinned to a hush. I texted my mother, "Home," and her reply was immediate. "Si, you okay?" I stared at the question. Could I say yes? My career, my breath, my spine were intact. Could I say no? The person I protected most had stood still when I needed him to move. "I'll come by in the morning," I typed. "Coffee ready," she wrote back. 3 words, enough to hold me steady. I slid open a drawer, pulled a fresh folder, labeled it Wedding Contracts. Inside went printouts of the venue, the caterer, the florist, pages I had skimmed once, now sharp with possibility, yellow highlighter for dates, pink for penalties, green for hidden clauses. The rasp of paper was the sound of decision. I didn't call it planning. I called it understanding, and understanding is mercy. There is pain like heat, then pain like ice. The second focuses you. It's the kind that keeps a woman awake with paragraph 3 on page 7 repeating in her head, not to destroy, but to protect. I turned on the TV for noise and muted it. A nature show flickered. Reef, predator, smaller fish moving together to survive. The camera caught the shadow before the strike. Recognition is survival. The hardest part of that night wasn't Sophia's words. It was Marco's silence. Family doesn't have a contract. It has an unspoken law. Protect each other. When someone forgets, someone else remembers. The oven clock read 12:43 a.m. My heels lay by the desk, carpet cool under bare feet, laptop still glowing. I opened one last blank page, typed 2 words, protection plan. The cursor pulsed after the N like breath held. I saved it, closed the lid. The folder caught a sliver of lamplight, edges crisp. In the stillness, I heard the city exhale, and I knew the first seam had already pulled free from a fabric stitched too tight. The morning after La Bella Vista, my mother's apartment smelled of coffee and laundry soap. The blinds rattled in a faint breeze, and the table bore its usual scratches from decades of meals and homework. She slid a mug toward me. No questions, just the sound of ceramic against wood and her hand covering mine for a second. That was enough. I drank slowly. She folded towels, humming low, the same tune I remembered from nights she scrubbed other people's kitchens. The ordinary rhythm steadied me, but beneath it, the file folder in my bag pulsed like a heartbeat. Wedding, contracts, not rage, not grief, a project. When I returned to my apartment, I set the folder on my desk. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, striping the papers like prison bars. I opened the first contract, the venue. Page 7, paragraph 3, cancellation clause, refund conditions, I underlined in green. Next, the catering agreement. 30 pages of glossy promises and penalties. Past violations in my search history blinked like small fires waiting for air. Each annotation calmed me. The hum of my pen across paper was steadier than breath. Law had taught me that precision is protection. That's what this was, protection. At work, I kept my face neutral. Clients still needed arguments, contracts, reassurance. But in the margins of meetings, I jotted Sophia's name, cross-referenced clauses, sketched arrows between financial exposure and personal facade. My legal pad became both shield and blade. Sarah, my colleague, caught me once. "You're somewhere else," she said, leaning against my doorway, eyes sharp. I looked up, pen paused. "I'm right here." Her silence told me she didn't believe it, but she let it go. Nights became my war room. Laptop open, tabs multiplying, social media analytics, financial filings, property deeds. I traced Sophia's digital footprint with the patience of someone unraveling fabric thread by thread. Patterns emerged. Inflated followers, purchased engagement, screenshots saved to folders named Exhibit A, B, C. I remembered Marco's grin years ago when I taught him how to open a checking account. "I'll never let anyone scam me," he'd said. My chest tightened at the memory. He hadn't seen predators wear silk dresses and perfect lipstick. The apartment grew littered with notes, yellow stickies on cabinets, printouts spread across the dining table, legal pads stacked like barricades. When I lay down at night, my brain replayed clauses instead of dreams. I kept the light on. One evening, Marco called, his voice tight. "Elena, can we talk?" I stared at the screen until it went dark. Not yet. Talking without proof was noise. Talking with proof would be strategy. Instead, I called a contact from law school, now in compliance at a major bank. "Hypothetically," I asked, "what patterns raise flags in joint accounts?" His laugh was weary. "Too many withdrawals timed to one partner's career milestones." I wrote it down. Another night, I messaged a former client, a florist I'd helped in a discrimination case. She remembered me. We spoke in quiet tones about commitments, deposits, vulnerabilities. When I hung up, I marked the floral contract with a circle, another seam identified. The pain from La Bella Vista never left. It transmuted. Less sting, more steel. I walked to work past billboards of influencers advertising lifestyles. I saw them differently now. Curated, calculated, each photo another clause in a contract no one had signed. One Saturday, my Aunt Rosa called. "Elena, people are whispering. Why didn't you smile at the dinner? Sophia says you caused tension." Her voice carried both concern and judgment. I held the phone away for a moment, watching sunlight glint on my ringless hand. "I smiled plenty, Tia." She sighed, unconvinced. "Families need unity." "Unity," I repeated after we hung up, "isn't silence." I wrote it at the top of my pad. The documents multiplied. I built timelines, cross-referenced messages, connected vendor vulnerabilities to contractual obligations. Each link formed a net, not to trap, but to reveal. Sarah knocked again late one night, finding me in the office long after hours. The fluorescent lights hummed. Papers towered around me. "You're playing something dangerous," she said softly. I kept my eyes on the file. Some games aren't optional. She studied me, then nodded, leaving me to the hum and the rustle of paper. The city outside pulsed on, neon signs blinking promises to strangers. In my apartment, I turned off music, turned off TV. Silence sharpened thought. Silence reminded me of Marco's face at the dinner table, still complicit. That silence now fueled every highlight, every annotation. My mother called one evening, voice gentle. "Mija, don't let bitterness eat you." I closed my eyes. It's not bitterness, Mama, it's clarity. She said nothing, but I could hear dishes clinking in her sink, her steady rhythm, survival made ordinary. That sound steadied me more than words. Days blurred into weeks. Coffee rings marked pages. My printer spat evidence like a drumbeat. I created a binder, black spine labeled simply SM, each section tabbed. Financial, digital, legal, personal. The binder sat heavy on the desk, presence undeniable. The work changed me. My colleagues noticed a sharper edge in my voice, my precision with clients' cases. Some admired, some worried. Sarah whispered, "Be careful, Elena." I only smiled faintly. Protection doesn't announce itself. It builds, silent and relentless. The night Marco texted again, "We need to talk." I glanced at the binder and felt the weight of both paper and years. Talking time was over. Proof was better than words. In the mirror, I saw myself, hair loose now, shadows under eyes, but gaze steady. A woman reshaped not by betrayal, but by what she decided to do with it. I closed the binder. The click of the rings settling echoed in the quiet apartment. Beyond the window, city lights shimmered, indifferent. Inside, my war room breathed with certainty. The pain of being erased at my brother's side had not disappeared. It had been repurposed. Every annotation, every screenshot, every conversation was fuel. I shut off the lamp. In the dark, the binder's outline loomed, silent, waiting. And I knew, when silence builds long enough, it becomes strategy. The binder stayed on my desk like a silent witness, but by the week of the wedding, it felt heavier than steel. Every clause underlined, every screenshot printed, every thread cross-referenced. Yet nothing prepared me for the collapse when theory became reality. 3 days before the ceremony, my phone rang at 7:14 a.m. Marco's voice cracked through the line, raw and frantic. "What have you done?" I stared at the ceiling above my bed. The fan spun slow circles, steady in its rhythm, unlike his voice. "Exactly what was necessary," I said. Silence followed, not the soft kind from La Bella Vista. This one carried weight, disbelief, the sound of glass fracturing. I ended the call before he could answer. The binder didn't need defense. It needed time. By afternoon, my inbox filled with copied notices. Venue, breach of health protocols, caterer, contract suspended, florist unresponsive. Photographers and transportation, each unraveling. The dominoes tipped exactly as planned. My cursor hovered over the final file, wedding insurance, clauses I'd dissected until they bled. The policy would cover nearly none of it. That evening, I walked past Coastal Estates, the pristine venue now locked, gates closed, fountains dry. The manicured gardens looked like props abandoned after a show. I stopped at the fence, pressed my hand against cool iron, and breathed in ocean air sharp with salt. Behind me, cars sped along the highway, oblivious. Inside those gates, $50,000 in illusion evaporated. Marco called again. I let it ring. Instead, I met my mother for coffee. She didn't ask about vendors or contracts. She looked into my eyes and held my hand. Her thumb traced circles the way she used to when I had nightmares as a child. No judgment, only understanding. Later that night, Aunt Rose's number lit my phone. I answered. "Elena, people are saying you destroyed the wedding. Why? This isn't like you." Her words were tight, rehearsed, as if she'd already taken sides. "Sometimes protection looks like destruction," I said quietly. She inhaled sharply. "Family doesn't do this." "Family doesn't stay silent either," I answered and hung up. The weight of her disapproval pressed, but only for a moment, because beneath it I remembered Sophia's voice at the restaurant. "Your presence complicates things." The complication now had a ledger, evidence stacked against her like a trial waiting to be called. 2 days before the wedding, Marco's text arrived. "We need to talk." I didn't respond, not yet. Words were useless until the curtain lifted. That night, Sophia's social media cracked. Cryptic captions, untagged posts, followers whispering in comment threads. Sponsors began pulling contracts. Screenshots circulated. Canceled venue, withdrawn caterers. The influencer sheen tarnished in real time. I sat in the dark laptop screen reflecting in my glasses, watching her empire bleed pixels. The sound of typing filled the room, steady, unrelenting. Each document saved was another nail. The next morning, I walked through my firm's hallways. The glass walls reflected a woman in a navy dress, posture perfect but eyes colder than marble. Sarah stopped me outside the copy room. "You're scaring me," she whispered. I smiled thinly. Good. At noon, Marco's call finally pierced my resolve. I answered. His voice was ragged. "Everything's gone. Do you understand? The venue, the vendors, they're gone. Sophia's sponsors are dropping her. People are talking. You've humiliated us." I kept my tone clinical. "No, Marco, I've protected you." "Protected me? You've destroyed my life." "Destroyed a facade," I corrected. He exhaled, shaky. "This isn't your choice to make." "It was always my choice," I said, then hung up. The city outside my office window stretched endless, skyscrapers gleaming. I wondered how many other men behind those glass panes had been hunted by someone smiling just enough for the camera. The day before the wedding, my mother and I met again. She poured tea instead of coffee this time. Her eyes carried the weight of every sacrifice she and my father had made. "Sometimes," she said, "you cut a branch to save the tree." I nodded. Her approval, quiet and steady, anchored me more than anything else. That night, Sophia's empire collapsed fully. One of her primary sponsors issued a public statement cutting ties. Hashtags turned against her. Screenshots of purchased followers spread across feeds. The perfect brand dissolved into a cautionary tale. I closed my laptop at 2 a.m., exhaustion finally seeping through my veins. The binder sat on the desk, pages worn from my hands. I rested my palm on it, feeling its solidity. Tomorrow would not be about pages anymore. Tomorrow would be about faces. The day of the wedding dawned gray. Rain threatened on the horizon. I dressed simply, black suit, hair pulled into a knot. The coastal estate stood empty when I arrived. The ocean stretched vast beyond the windows, waves restless. Inside, tables remained unset, chairs stacked, chandeliers unlit. The silence was cavernous. Marco arrived first. His tailored suit hung like armor, shoulders slumped. He looked older than he had days ago. Sophia followed minutes later, her designer dress immaculate but her face cracking, makeup smudged, hair not quite in place, the facade no longer seamless. "You've destroyed everything," she hissed, voice shaking with rage and desperation. I stood near the window, reflection steady against storm clouds gathering. No, I illuminated the truth. The air between us thickened. I opened the binder, laid evidence out page by page. Bank statements showing her timed relationships, screenshots of messages discussing Marco as a target, charts proving inflated metrics, each document a blow, precise and undeniable. "You're a professional manipulator," I said, voice calm. "Not a partner, a strategist. And Marco was your next acquisition." Marco's face drained of color. His eyes darted from page to page, reality replacing illusion in real time. Sophia's lips parted, but no words came. The silence revealed more than defense could. "Do you know how many of her luxury posts were fabricated?" I continued, pulling digital forensics. Angles, staging, rented cars, borrowed jewelry, illusion stacked on illusion. The storm outside pressed against glass, wind rattling panes. Inside, the empire she had built disintegrated under fluorescent lights and black ink. Marco whispered, almost to himself, "Why?" Sophia didn't answer. Her silence was confession enough. I placed the final piece of evidence before them, a dossier documenting her pattern, 3 relationships, each ending after financial extraction. Marco was next in line. "Family isn't a business transaction," I told her. "It's a trust, one you were never worthy of." Her face collapsed. The woman who had glowed under chandeliers at La Bella Vista now looked stripped bare. No filters, no perfect angles, just exposed. Marco's hands shook as he touched the pages. His breath came uneven, like someone waking from anesthesia. The first drops of rain hit the windows, streaking glass with lines of silver. The sound was cleansing, final. The wedding would never happen, but it had never been about a wedding. It was about protection. I closed the binder. The click echoed in the vast, empty hall. Marco looked at me, voice breaking. I didn't see it. You weren't meant to, I said gently. The storm outside roared. Inside, silence held us like a verdict. The storm outside Coastal Estates did not let up. Sheets of rain blurred the ocean into a single gray horizon. Inside, my binder lay closed on the long oak table, its edges still damp from my hands. Silence stretched so taut it could have snapped. Marco pressed both palms against the table as if to steady himself. Elena, what am I supposed to do with this? The question cracked something in me. For years, I had been his silent scaffolding, funding his classes, writing his contracts, ensuring his ascent. Now the scaffolding had collapsed, and the man I had built a platform for was staring at rubble. You face it, I said, voice even. You face her, you face yourself. Sophia turned, fury sharp in her eyes. You've sabotaged everything. Do you understand what you've done? You've ruined us in front of sponsors, clients, everyone. This was our moment. Her words clattered against the room like dropped glass. I stepped closer, steady, my heels striking the marble with measured authority. This wasn't sabotage, I replied. It was exposure. The difference matters. Marco rubbed his temples, shoulders sagging. His once immaculate suit looked less like triumph now, more like armor wearing thin. The confrontation unfolded like a deposition. I asked questions. Sophia dodged. I presented evidence. Her silence betrayed her. Each page of the dossier was a cross-examination without a courtroom. You knew about her history? Marco finally asked me, voice low. I discovered it after she told me to leave the rehearsal dinner, I said. That was the trigger. I looked deeper, and the truth was waiting. Sophia's voice rose, shrill against the rain. You think you can play judge and jury because you're a lawyer? You're just jealous. You've always wanted to control Marco's life. Her accusation landed heavy in the room, but it didn't pierce me. I stood straighter. Jealousy doesn't produce bank statements, Sophia, or falsified metrics, or a trail of broken men funding your illusions. The words hit harder than shouting. Marco's head dropped, and he exhaled a sound I'd never heard from him, half laugh, half sob. Sophia lunged forward, her manicured hand slapping the dossier shut. You don't get to define love, she snapped. I leaned in, close enough to see the cracks in her eyeliner. Neither do you. You only define opportunity. For a moment, the rain filled the silence, hammering the windows like applause. Marco finally pushed the binder back toward me. His voice shook. I don't know who to believe. That sentence stung. Years of loyalty, countless sacrifices, and he still hesitated. But betrayal has a way of blinding people. I steadied myself. Then believe the evidence, I said. I slid one photo forward, a screenshot of Sophia's messages describing Marco as a solid investment. His eyes scanned the words, disbelief crumbling into recognition. Sophia reached for his hand. Baby, those were jokes, taken out of context. Marco pulled away. For the first time, he didn't shield her. It was the break I needed. The rain outside turned heavier, wind rattling the glass. Inside, Sophia's mask cracked further. She paced the room, hair falling from its perfect style, words tumbling fast and frantic. You think you're saving him? You're destroying his reputation. Do you know how fast the real estate world moves? Do you know how much gossip can cost? I stood calm. Reputation built on lies collapses faster than truth revealed. That's what I know. Marco's breathing grew uneven. I can't handle this. I stepped closer, softer now. You don't have to handle it alone. I've built the case. What you do with it is up to you. His eyes flicked between us, between blood and betrayal. For once, he didn't look away from me. The confrontation carried into the following days. Vendors demanded explanations. Insurance companies sent notices. The family divided, some whispering that I'd overstepped, others quietly grateful I'd stopped the wedding before it became catastrophe. Aunt Rosa cornered me at my parents' apartment. You humiliated Marco in front of the whole community, she said, her voice heavy with reproach. I answered steadily, better humiliated than destroyed. Her frown deepened, but she had no rebuttal. Meanwhile, Sophia launched her counterattack. On social media, she framed herself as the victim, betrayed by a jealous sister-in-law, targeted by lies. She posted teary videos in designer loungewear, captions begging followers to see the truth. But truth had already taken root. Screenshots circulated faster than her curated posts. Brands cut ties publicly. Her follower count plummeted. Hashtags turned brutal. I watched it unfold on my laptop, detached, not gloating, simply documenting. Lawyers are trained to separate fact from performance, and her performance was unraveling. At the office, Sarah pulled me aside. "Elena, this is bigger than you think. You're not just exposing her, you're making enemies." I met her gaze. "Then let them come. I'm prepared." Her concern lingered, but she didn't press. Marco avoided me for days, shame weighing heavier than anger. When he finally called, his voice was quieter, worn. "Everything's gone. Sponsors, venue, her reputation, my reputation. Do you realize what you've cost me?" I listened, then spoke gently. "Do you realize what she would have cost you?" Silence, then a ragged breath. "I don't know how to face people." "You face them with truth," I said. "It's the only currency that lasts." The next confrontation wasn't in a grand venue, but at my parents' kitchen table. Marco sat across from me, shoulders hunched, eyes rimmed red. Sophia wasn't there, just us. "I hate you right now," he whispered. I didn't flinch. "You'll thank me later." He buried his face in his hands. "I don't know if I can." Our mother entered quietly, placing coffee mugs before us. She didn't speak, but her eyes held the truth we both avoided. Sometimes love means breaking before you heal. Sophia tried one last strike, threatening legal action, hinting at defamation. My binder stood ready, every document meticulously sourced, every screenshot authenticated. My response was a single letter drafted on firm letterhead, concise, devastating. She withdrew within a week. By then, the storm had passed. The wedding never happened. Coastal estates remained empty, a mausoleum of what might have been. Sophia vanished from feeds, her empire collapsing like a house of cards. Marco's silence lingered longest. For weeks, he barely spoke to me. When he did, it was clipped, cautious. But silence is also space for truth to settle. The confrontation had cost me dearly, family trust, reputation, peace, but it had saved more than it destroyed. One night, months later, Marco knocked on my door. He stood in my hallway, no suit, just jeans and a hoodie. His voice was hoarse. "You were right." I let him in. He sat on the couch, hands clasped, eyes raw. "I couldn't see it. I didn't want to see it. But you saw it for me." For the first time since La Bella Vista, I allowed myself to exhale fully. "Seeing is my job," I said softly. He laughed bitterly. "And my curse." I shook my head. "Not curse, lesson." The rain had long stopped. Outside my window, the city lights glowed steady. Inside, the confrontation was finally complete. Not with Sophia, not with vendors or contracts, but with Marco himself. I reached for his hand, squeezed once. He squeezed back. The silence this time didn't wound. It mended. The weeks after the storm felt like living inside an aftershock. Conversations in our family moved cautiously, as if the ground might still break. Coastal estates stood empty, its manicured gardens left to wind and salt. But inside our circle, something began to mend. Marco came often to our parents' apartment. He no longer arrived in tailored suits. Sometimes it was just jeans and the hoodie he wore back in college. He sat with my mother at the kitchen table, shoulders heavy but eyes more honest than I'd seen in years. "How did I not see it?" he asked one evening, his fingers tracing the rim of a chipped mug. "Because predators know where to hide," I told him gently. "They look like everything you've been told to want." He nodded, shame still clinging, but clarity slowly replacing it. My mother squeezed his hand, silent understanding flowing through the gesture. Family dinners became therapy. My father, usually reserved, spoke about the years of sacrifice, how survival meant recognizing threats before they consumed you. Aunts and uncles who once whispered now admitted they had doubted Sophia from the beginning. Slowly, Marco absorbed the truth. What seemed like destruction had been preservation. At work, I noticed a shift in myself too. Cases involving financial deception landed on my desk more often, and I approached them with sharpened instincts. Clients sought me out for protection against calculated love. My experience with Sophia had carved a new edge into my practice. Personal pain turned professional strength. Sophia, meanwhile, vanished. Her social media empire collapsed, sponsors gone, followers evaporating. Attempts to retaliate failed under the weight of documented evidence. The world she curated so carefully crumbled faster than anyone expected. But revenge had never been the prize. Protection was. Months passed. Marco began counseling, rebuilding his life one boundary at a time. He started a foundation supporting victims of emotional and financial manipulation. I joined him, offering legal counsel for cases that mirrored ours too closely. Together, we turned a wound into a shield for others. One evening, we returned to the coastal cliffs where the confrontation had taken place. The ocean stretched wide, restless but steady. Rain had given way to a clear horizon painted gold by sunset. Marco stood beside me, the wind pulling at his jacket. "I hated you for a long time," he admitted quietly. "I know, but you saved me," he said, voice breaking. "You saved all of us." I didn't answer right away. I watched the waves crash, each one a reminder that survival is never quiet. It's forceful, insistent, relentless. Finally, I said, "Family isn't blind love, it's fierce love. Sometimes that means breaking what's fragile to protect what's sacred." He nodded, tears catching the light. For the first time since La Bella Vista, I believed he saw me fully, not just as a sister, but as the wall that had stood when everything else collapsed. As the sun dipped lower, I thought about our parents' calloused hands, our mother's quiet songs, the chipped mug on the table. The story of our family was never about perfection. It was about survival, rebuilt again and again. And I had become very good at rebuilding. If you've listened to my story, maybe you've lived pieces of it too, being erased, doubted, or forced to choose between peace and protection. Let it remind you, silence is not loyalty. Truth is, protection sometimes looks like destruction, but what it saves matters more than what it shatters. This isn't just my family's story. It belongs to anyone who has stood between someone they love and someone who would consume them. It's proof that even betrayal can carve a path to clarity, resilience, and new purpose. Thank you for walking this path with me. If our journey speaks to yours, I invite you to join us at Family Power Stories. Like, comment, and sub, so stories like ours don't vanish into silence. Together, we can turn pain into power and survival into something stronger than survival: renewal.